At the journey once again, as usual. I got my co-host here, Courtney.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
What up? Yeah, so we're pretty much coming out of quarantine. Merkel just recently was going to close us down again. Apparently everybody was kind of on the same boat and was like, no, that's ridiculous. We want out. They had planned protests throughout the country to try to reopen it again and try to say, hey, you can't do this. You can't just willy-nilly close and then open and then close, just, however you want. So now we're about to be open slowly. And yeah. So it's been an interesting ride. Courtney has been here 3 years now. So it's your anniversary, your German anniversary.
I guess you could say that. So it'll be like 3 years, the beginning of April, that I have been living here in Germany with you, and we started this crazy journey together.
So what's this crazy journey been like? How'd you run us through the rewind to when you first got here, or even before?
Even before, because most people, they don't really like when they meet me like being here, they just look at me like, oh, like she's just here with Abe, but like they don't really know how what my story is with getting here. They're like, oh, like Abe got orders and like she came with them. And I feel like when you are in a setting like this, especially like being overseas, most people you meet our active duty and they got orders over here and they were told to come here, or they're a military spouse and their spouse is active duty and they were told to come here. And then there's DOD civilians you meet and they apply for a job over here. And that's where I fall under with them. And our story, or my story, is just like a little bit different.
So just for our non-military listeners, orders are pretty much a piece of paper that says, hey, it's like you're going to go work over here and this is your visa in order to enter the country to go work there. But how did you...
there you go.
What were you under?
When I started working here?
Yeah, you were under the SOFA status, right? You had to get your own SOFA status.
Yeah, so I'm considered self-sponsored, where most quote-unquote military dependents are under the sponsorship of their military spouse, or the military member that's here is under a sponsorship with their commander.
Right. And run through what is SOFA status, and yeah.
What does that even mean? So a SOFA status is a agreement essentially that's given to you when you enter into the country over here. And it's an agreement between the foreign government and the U.S. government. Stands for Status of Forces Agreement. And to me, it's like this card that they give you, and it gives you access to, for one, be legally employed here, and for two, because you can only enter and exit so much without being flagged on your passport, typically like pre-COVID times. But this allows you to, transport yourself, I would say, like without issue every time of flying. Like you won't be flagged at TSA when you fly. Or
customs, right?
Customs.
So yeah, I think it's 3 months, the visa that most Americans have, if you are an American, that you can, come and go as you please. It's an agreement. It's called the Shanghai visa, and it's an agreement pretty much with the United States and the European Union, saying, hey, you can come and go as you please as a tourist for 3 months, total of 3 months. So you can come and go, a month, go back, and it still, I think, has to be within 6 months, 3 months total that you can stay here. But on your third month, you have to pretty much exit the country and leave for a total of 6 months, regardless of what you're doing here. Or you're going to be taxed like these outrageous taxes and like fined, and you might not be able to come back if you go to the United States and then come back on. You'll probably get stopped by customs. So that's how most people come and go. But for military members and with this SOFA agreement, you're able to legally work here and pay U.S. taxes and be employed in Germany. It's like this, and there's a whole bunch of other stipulations like tax. It's mainly like a tax thing. So things like coffee, alcohol, your income, all sorts of different taxable items that you don't really think of. Different countries tax those things differently. So you as a military member don't have to pay the 19% German tax for groceries or, goods without the, out in the economy. So this SOFA agreement entitles you to a bunch of privileges while being here on behalf of the United States as like an ambassador per se. So yeah. So you came on your own SOFA status, which most people do. What was that process like?
Very lengthy. So if you want to start from the beginning, when we started dating, you were working here or you were living here already, and you're active duty. And I was living in Philadelphia, working, had my whole life over there. Never thought that I would see the day that I would leave the East Coast or be living in Germany. And we started dating, and probably before we were like actually official, it was like a conversation that we had entertained for like a while of if I would ever like live overseas. And I remember being like, yeah, like it's always been something in the back of my head. And I didn't even realize it at the time, but it was like a huge bucket list item. Like I had like randomly wrote down as like future plans one day and then like forgot about it. And then when we were officially dating, I was like, oh shit, like, seeing somebody that lives in Germany and he's active duty, like this could be my life, like where I'm going to have to play a role where I'm a military dependent and I've never done this before. And if I love this guy enough, one of us are going to have to give up our life.
That was pretty interesting for a while too, just taking flights back and forth nonstop, hops, flights, whatever, every month pretty much, right? So pretty interesting. But
we were long distance for about a year. And I would say anybody who's in a long distance relationship, like we didn't really like have a hard set date like that, like we're reaching for this. Like we're kind of like, I feel like I look back and I'm like, everything happened so fast. But I would say anybody in a long distance relationship, like you have to like put a suspense time on it or it's not going to work out. But
well, I was confronted, right, with the option of either going back to the United States or extending my time here in Germany if you came. So I was like, either go back to the East Coast from Philly or, extend my time in Germany. And you were like, extend your time and I'll get a job over there.
And I feel
easier
like,
said than done.
Yeah. And do you remember like all the conversations we had and you're like, how is this going to happen? I was like, I always say I go into everything hope and bliss, like very hopeful, but yet very blissful. And I was like, I don't know, Abe, like it's just going to work itself out. Like it's just going to happen. And you're like, okay. And then what was really happening was I was on the other end or the other side of the world, like, holy shit, like, how do I make this work? And, I really, when we were talking about like, hey, are you going to move over here or am I going to move over there? I was in a place where, as happy as I was, I knew it was time to close the chapter on living on the East Coast. And
Because you had a pretty dope job, right? You're
I
over here
really
like
do.
riding around in helicopters in New York City and whatnot.
yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I actually was working on a Boeing plant for a couple years out in Philadelphia, a little suburb in Philly, and it was a wild ride. It was a really good job, and I was so happy there. I was so content, like all the things you want, like good coworkers, an excellent place of business where there's nothing but growth, and it was in a really good area. Like I love Philadelphia, but I just knew that everything just lined up and it was time for me to go. And about that time, like you and I got serious, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this from a sign of the universe that I should just go to Germany. And I really, it was one of those things where you're like, I'm going to do it, but I'm also not going to tell anybody because they're going to think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we made that decision, my first step was I told, a few friends. Like I didn't tell really anyone, like maybe 2 or 3 of my close friends, because I knew that if I were to open up about it to everybody, they would just, talk me out of my decision, or they would just tell me that I was crazy and it would just, get into my mental space. So that was like one thing, is that people really, didn't know that we were together because I just didn't really talk about it. And then my next step was I had to tell my boss, and I was scared because I would say probably before I let my employer know, I had just had a very serious feedback with them and telling them like, this is my plans for this is my 5-year plan. And none of it, you guys, at that time, had anything to do with being in a serious relationship and going to move to Germany. Because at that time that I had had that feedback, I wasn't in that place in my life. So, and I say that because I feel like a lot of women get a lot of scrutiny, and we're just put under the microscope in a way that men aren't. And we're not allowed to make these decisions without, did you talk to everybody, and are you sure that this is what you want? But I feel like if a man were to walk into, an employer's office and be like, hey, I'm doing this, they'd get a pat on the back. And so I felt like I needed to, again, protect myself and my relationship. And so I was very, very quiet, and I didn't make a huge announcement that I was going to be making this move.
Which is funny too, because your boss, right, ended up getting over here to Germany around the same time too. And
again, my whole journey with moving to Germany, it was one of those things. It was as funny as it sounds, it was for me, a really big spiritual journey, and very weird thing that I started to believe in magic in the universe. So before everything really popped off, my boss was like, hey, I'm applying for a job in Germany. And I was like, oh, how weird. You've lived in the same city your whole life, and you're just going to up and move to Germany. And she was set to retire. And that was we had a brief conversation, and that was kind of it. And then when I walked into her office, she was like, oh, how funny, because I just got accepted for the job I interviewed over there. And I was like, oh, how crazy. And so, we were really just aligned in that way, that it was just really weird that she was going to be employed in Germany, and that I was looking for a job. And not only that, but we ended up working in the same building, but before it all played out,
Which is in where, as big as all these different agencies within Germany are, you're talking about needle in a haystack type situation. It's very unlikely that you get the same building in the same city in the same office next door to each other. So just to paint a picture.
Yeah, very, very unlikely. So, like, and I felt so weird telling her, but then when she told me she ended up getting the job, I was like, oh, how crazy is, I just like, I don't know. It's just one of those weird moments that you're both like, oh, how weird. And, I was really fortunate. I would say anybody who's in this situation, like, I pride myself in how professional I am and how I articulate myself in the workplace. And I really did leave out the personal piece in it. And I just had told her, look, my life is changing. As much as I love my job out here, I'm going to move to Germany. And she was very respectful. She didn't, laugh in my face, and not that she would,
yeah,
but
why would
I
she?
just envision, because I will say that when I had to tell other people that I'd worked with that I was leaving, some people were like, okay, like this girl's going to move to Germany. Like, do you speak German? Like they didn't really get it.
Yeah, like
It's kind of ludicrous when you think about it.
Yeah. Now that you're here, you're like, oh, you don't necessarily need to speak. It helps.
Yeah.
But you don't need to speak German. I think mainly because the German people speak English, and now like technology and everything, Google Translate and
All the things.
all these tools that you have available, you don't necessarily need it, and it's not so foreign. Like it's all life. Like we're all the same type of people. So yeah, now looking back on it, and now living in different countries, Europe, Korea, IED, but all these places are kind of, it's the same,
Yeah,
language,
you can
languages.
get around.
Yeah, you can get around that.
So and like I said, like, I mean, imagine, Abe, like you're in my shoes and you're having to like and people look at you differently when you're a woman trying to be independent and do something on your own. So that's why I say, like nobody, she didn't laugh in my face. Like I was really nervous to walk into my boss's office and be like, hey, I'm about to, move across the world by myself with, and so it went really well. And, I told her that I would like to keep it private and that this was, something that I was going to be working on. And as I moved forward, I would, keep her updated. And so, I mean, my journey in that started like right there in that moment that I was like, all right, like I have to start looking for jobs. And because I work for the Department of Defense, I knew this before we were like, hey, let's make this decision. Like a couple of things. I have a reserves unit, right? When I say I had my whole life in Philadelphia, I had my reserves unit in New Jersey that I was a part of. I was going to school part-time that I knew, okay, I've got to figure out what to do with those two things. And then lastly, my job. But I knew that all three of those things that were a top priority to me, I knew that I could move them and make them flexible to where I could be living in Germany and still go after those things, like still be in the reserve, still work, and still go to school. And so once I knocked out the school portion, because I was like, I can just go all online and finish my degree when I get to Germany, then the next thing I needed to do was go talk to my reserves unit. So I had to break the news, to my team, like, this is what I'm doing, and I just want, the support and the respect. And there was a little bit of scrutiny from some people that I worked with, like I said, like, they're like, you don't even speak German. Like, this is just crazy. Like, your whole life is here. And I just kept
Mainly
moving.
too, because a lot of people, they can't envision themselves leaving their place of comfort. So when you're like, I'm leaving, and obviously for you, you're not even from Philadelphia, you're from Texas originally, but now, Philadelphia was your home and you had been residing there for so long. For them, for a lot of people, it's very foreign just to be like, hey, I'm leaving, I'm dipping, I'm out. And then they're like, yeah, but this is your home. Why would you ever leave? Like, you have everything that you need right here, you know? And it's been interesting encountering those people throughout our journey. So
Yeah, like no idea, like they couldn't fathom. And so, then I knew that there was a program that I had heard of that would allow me flexibility. Otherwise, I was going to have to leave the reserves, and I was really nervous because I'm very independent financially, and I didn't want to give that part of my life up. And I am very career driven and selfish pre-Levi. So I was like, I got to make this work. So that journey in itself, finding the program and getting in, that was another story, another day. But that took a lot of work and effort, and I didn't have all the answers on how to get into this program, and I just had to pull names out of hats and look to my leadership and be like, look, I want this, help me get it. And they didn't have the answers. And I was really, really fortunate that I had some damn good mentors who were like, I don't have the answers, but I'm about to go into my phone book and I'm about to start making phone calls. And if it wasn't for them doing half the things that they did, I might not be sitting here in the reserve still.
yeah.
And so there was that piece to it. And then came the time to really just buckle down and stay in a lot and put my wallet on a huge budget. And I had to start saving because, I probably didn't mention this in the beginning when we were dating, but because I'm so like prideful and my ego, like as you get older, like things happen, and financially, like I wasn't equipped to just come out of pocket however much on my own dime to move to Germany. And so like,
yeah, because
it's super expensive.
it's very expensive to ship your vehicle. You're talking about like, $6,000-7,000. You might as well, which you did, right? You ended up, selling your vehicle.
I didn't sell it.
We'll talk
It's a
about
story
that.
later.
We'll talk about that. We'll hint. But you sold. You got rid of your car, so that way you didn't have to ship it. And I was like, just buy one here. We'll get you a brand new car here. You ended up right selling all your stuff from your apartment, which I was like, sell all your stuff. You're like, no, I love my stuff. I've collected this over the years. And I was like, all right, send your most important stuff over here and I'll ship it. But it's going to, be bukus of money to ship all that stuff over here because you're going to have a lot of out-of-pocket costs coming over here, right?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Getting rid of all my stuff.
And selling it.
Selling it.
On Craigslist.
Was it Craigslist? Jeez. I got rid of it on there was an app. I had an app, I can't remember, but I'm like, that's another story another time. That was an adventure in itself. I am such a people person, so selling my stuff, I would just like people want to know like why you're selling your stuff. I ended up giving my couch away for free because I came down to like crunch time and I had to get rid of it. And I was really sad because I'm very weird about money and when I purchase things, and I hold a lot of sentimental value. So I bought my first couch on my own, and I was very sad to get rid of it. And I remember telling the girl, was like, why are you getting rid of this nice couch for free? And I was like, I'm moving to Germany and like I have to get rid of it. And it's just funny, like having to tell this story like 10 times over as people are coming to pick up your stuff and then wondering.
Yeah, people are crazy too. When you try to get rid of stuff, you're like, even here, sometimes I try to sell things super cheap just to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. And then people have the audacity. It'll be like couch, $10, just for my time. And then they're like, hey, do you deliver? I'm like, are you, what? What?
Yeah, no, seriously, people would hit me up with crazy things, requests like that a lot. Like the couch. Hey, well, we know you're giving the couch away for free, but I live an hour away. Do you deliver for free too? I was like, are you fucking kidding me? No.
No, this isn't an act of goodwill. I'm just trying to get rid of this.
Like, I don't even
this
understand.
Couch. Chill.
So I had a lot of plans to get over here, right? So my last plan that I'll mention first was I was like, well, I could take a break from work and go to school to finish out my degree. And I was trying to figure out how I could study abroad. I mean, that was like a very, very like last ditch effort. Like maybe by that point I've like really lost my mind to do that. And then my second option was to look into military assignments, because you can always pick up a military in the reserves. You can volunteer for an assignment over here, but everything has to line up. Like, it has to be here. It has to be in my job for the Air Force. And I was particularly looking for a 365 because that was like the most ideal at the time. And my thought process was get my foot in the door over here and make my name known, and then line up a job and see where it goes. And instantly, right away, I don't know if you remember, but like what happened is I came to see you in the fall, and then I came home and I had applied for a 365, and we were so excited, and it was like fingers crossed and everything. And then
what happened?
I didn't get picked. I was, it was between me and someone else. And like, I was like calling, because you have to submit it through a system. And I was calling the program manager. I would say like nonstop, like, where is it now? Okay, where is it now? Where is it now? Because it has to vet through a process when it comes to military assignments. So
that didn't work out.
It didn't work out.
What did you do?
Well, I remember I was just so devastated because at that time I was ready. And I'm mentioning this because someone told me, and it stuck with me. And, I was just so devastated. And she was like, have you ever heard of a Chinese proverb? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? And she's like, it's about the farmer. And she was like, the farmer's son. I'll give you like a very, very like, the Cliff Notes. He's like, the farmer's son.
All right. So the farmer's son. Yes.
No, but, it's about the horse runs away, and then the townspeople are like, isn't that terrible? And then in the end, the whole point of the proverb, it's like, you never know with what life brings you, if it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. And so she was saying was, just because you didn't get this assignment, you think it's a bad thing, but there could be something better, or maybe something worse.
Or the horse ran away.
Or the horse just ran away. Okay. So I'm not going to get into the full story. We'll add it on the Instagram. Look up the Chinese proverb with the farmer and his son, and you guys read it. It was really good. I think it was one of those things, universal timing, that she shared that with me, because it helped shift my mindset, and it helped me grow in a way that I needed to in order to honestly like be prepared for this journey here in Germany. And so I was like, okay, like I cried about it and I'm over it now, keep going. So my real idea of coming over here was to transfer my position, my civilian position, and work over here. But here's the thing, is that it was like going up a huge giant with me trying to get my foot in the door over here. And I had no idea, like, really how competitive it was. Yeah. And I was just
you have everybody in the United States trying to come over for these like ambassador positions per se, right? Like, because everybody that works in the government at part or for this is an ambassador, and then you have to do your job. So you have to like go through all these trainings and do all that, and security screening stuff, background checks.
It's very intense. Let's put some numbers on it. So for one job over here, One job. There's an estimated about 100 applicants for one job. And if you're unfamiliar with the process, you apply for the job and then you go through a vetting process. And once you go through the vetting process and you have to take a test, and if you score high enough, then you make it to what they call the hiring officials list. And that gets cut down typically to about 50 people, we'll say. And then from there, you get your 50 resumes get sent to the person that's hiring for this one job. And they have to go and cut it down even further. And typically it gets cut down who's the top, who scored the highest. So then it's cut down to
Scored the highest on what?
On the test that you take when you are applying for jobs.
What test?
Through USA Jobs, which it is the system that you go through when you are working for the government. And so once you get to the hiring officials desk, then they go through, and whoever does it for them, they'll be like, these are all the top applicants out of there. So they could take 30 out of that 50. So then there's 30 stacks of resumes they have to go through to see who do they want to interview. So you have to jump from one to one to one to one just to get an interview. And then out of that...
And you pretty much have to write an essay, right?
Yes. Now they've changed it for USA Jobs. If you're unfamiliar, it's the system that you use when you work for the government. And there's typically 25 questions per job if you are applying. And they make you do a paragraph, an essay for each question as to why you are a subject matter expert in the question. It asks, why are you a subject matter? It asks you a question. You're like, can you do this? And you're like, yes. And then you're like, okay, and why are you a subject matter expert? Explain to us why. And you have to do that 25 times for one job. Mm-hmm. And then you have to hope that you make it, to the top and get a call. So that's a lot. And I didn't know that that's what it looked like when I started, that's what I was competing against.
Plus internal hires, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of good old boy system type, right? Where it's I know Joe from security. I think he'd be good for this job,
Yeah. So it was a very long process where I was applying for jobs. I mean, by the time it was said and done, I had applied for over 40 jobs. And then after I didn't get the military assignment, you had deployed to Africa. And it was one of those moments where it was kind of scary because it was it felt like it happened so fast because I had just got back to the States from seeing you, and I had been home for maybe barely 2 weeks. And then you got a last minute call and you're like, I'm out the door. And
yeah, so in the midst of all this, I got short notice sent to Africa to build a base and do a bunch of pretty crazy stuff for month, 2 months, something like that, in the Sahara.
And you had no access. You barely had access. You were
it was literally in the middle of Sahara. There was camels rolling by and nomads, and we're just at this little place trying to stand this whole place up and trying to put down communications, water stuff, so we could survive. So that way they could start pretty much. I'm not gonna get into it because I think it's kind of some of it's kind of classified, but So I was down there fucking around,
You had to call me on a calling card.
Camel spiders, yeah. Calling Courtney over here on phone cards, with some random janky phones hooked up to a satellite. It was kind of crazy, but it was a good experience. So I was just kind of out of pocket, out of this picture, for like 2 months somewhere in Africa. So that was interesting. And you're over here like trying to fight for your life, trying to get over here.
And I remember my girlfriends were like, "Are you ready for this? Like, this is going to be your life. Like, you're going to be in your day-to-day routine and he's going to be gone." And I was like, it was very like, it was an eye-opening experience because I've never, like I said, I was active duty. Like, I lived that life, but I've never lived a life where now I'm wearing this hat as a military spouse, supporting someone in their career. So it was very eye-opening. And
Well, not yet spouse at the time.
yeah,
Right?
but you're like playing into that. And then I actually it was very eye-opening and a little scary all at the same time. But what
And then you wreck your car.
it's like, I didn't know if we should get into that part. Yeah, so why he's in Africa, I was traveling and it was raining and I got into a car wreck and it was just as,
What kind of car hit you?
It was just like a Toyota Camry. And I had never been in a wreck, but I wrecked the car.
T-bone.
No, this wasn't, this was the first time. So, yeah. So just stay tuned, guys, or just listen. So I got into a wreck. You're over in Africa and you're like, "Hey, how's everything going?" And I'm like, literally falling apart. And I'm like, "Oh my, I got into a wreck." My car was totaled. I had no idea like how to go through that process. And you guys, like, I'm like, it's another story, another day. But I learned so much about cars, and I had to, on the fly, about cars. I had to quickly go and buy another car by myself, no help. And then I had to follow everything through my insurance.
It was a nice car, too.
It was my
And then
first
it got
car.
wrecked.
So I bought another car, and big girl purchase. I was so proud of myself. Like, I got a really good deal. And then what happened? I came to see you. It was Christmas time. Like, fast forward, he's back from Africa. I'm like, I'm getting on the plane. I'm coming to see you. Like,
We're in Prague or Switzerland. Where
Yeah,
we
we
go?
went- we
went
were
to
in-
Prague, right, for
yeah.
New Year's.
And then
we're like,
we went-
"Woo."
Yep.
You're like, "I just bought a car. Check this out."
Yeah,
Woo.
yeah, yeah.
We're like, "Yeah, this is awesome."
And then we went to Switzerland, and by this time, my former boss at the time was already here. So I had set up a business meeting with her, and I just wanted to kind of use it as a way to say hi. This person was so influential in my life, and like, still to this day is such an amazing mentor. And so I just wanted to see her. And then I was like, I want to use this as a networking opportunity to kind of see if I can get my foot in the door. What can I do? And she met you, and I was like, so this is actually why I'm moving here, because we're together. And then not even 9 hours off the plane. And by that point, I was like really pumped to go back home. We had like really set some, like, at that point, some hard deadlines on what we wanted and when we were going to get there and how we were going to get there, as far as like us being in Germany together. And not even 12 hours off the plane from Germany, I am going into work the next day, and I was T-boned in my brand new car. And it changed my life. Like, I just remember having to call you and be like, so I just remember calling you and having to explain like, hey, made it. And also I just got into another wreck. And I would say, whereas the first wreck I got into was, it was my fault because my car hydroplaned into another lane, which that was like
That's not your fault.
Yeah,
And then this time
I was pulling into traffic, but I had the right of way. But somebody that was in the back of the lane, she was impatient and she saw that the light was green, and she pulled out into the median, going full force, and boom, hit me.
T-bone, right?
T-boned. And I
Totaled the car again?
Totaled the car again. My second car. I was like, holy shit. It was a very eye-opening experience because, for one, I was like, oh my God, I'm alive. Can I move my hands and my toes? And am I going to be able to walk again? And for two, my emergency contacts were my coworkers who are, like now they're like my sisters, but at the same time, I was like, this is my life right now. Like, I have no one here. And the one person that I want to spend the rest of my life with is in Germany. Like, what am I doing? Why am I fighting so hard to stay here and get to Germany in my eyes in the most logical way when this could be a sign that it's time for me to just go? So, riding in the ambulance over to the hospital, and I was having all these epiphanies, if you will, and then my friends, my girls, showed up, and they were like, get on the plane and go back. We love you, but this is a sign that you need to go to Germany. And I was like, you guys, I don't have any plans. Like, this is not in the plans. And I was like, I don't have a job. Like, I feel crazy doing that. And so I was like, all right. So me and you had a talk because, me at that time, I was just going to speed up my time by like 2 months. And I was like, are you ready for this? Like, I think we're going to, I'm going to jump, and I need to know that you're ready for me. And, you were like, yeah, like, I need you here. And because, you had said to me, I remember like being in the hospital, and you're like, what do I do? Like, do I get on a plane and do I come and be with you? Like, I don't even know what to do. And, me, like, I was like, no, stay there. Inside, I'm like, but get on the plane. But he didn't. But that's okay. And wow, no. So then everything started to fall into place. I was accepted into the reserves program that I had applied for. And then I was able to go and serve the rest of my time for the rest of the physical year. And I really...
Almost sounds like prison when you say it that way.
What? The
you're
physical
like,
year?
No, you're like...
or serve the rest of my time.
Serve the rest of my time.
So what I mean by that is that when you're in the reserves, you have like a military commitment that a set amount of duty time that you have to serve. And so...
Kind of like prison. I'm just kidding.
And so I had to like finish up my military commitment for the year. And what was crazy was how I am in Louisiana, because that's where I was stationed at the time, and I get a email from an agency here in Germany, and they're like, hey, we just came across your resume, and we want to interview you tomorrow. And I was like, are you joking? Because at that time...
That's pretty much like a shoo-in, right? At that point.
Yes. And at that point, I had already... Everyone, my employers knew, like, hey, I'd already been let go from my traditional reserves unit. So, I'd wrapped that up, and my employer knew what about me being in the wreck. And I was like, I'm speeding up my timeline a lot faster than what I thought. And this is what I'm going to do, because I had to do a lot of extensive research. And also, by the way, you guys, like, I was trying to heal myself physically. And
You fought with the broken back.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Mike Tyson.
I literally was at home on sick leave, Googling nonstop on my laptop, like learned about the Shanghai visa, because I was like, how do I legally enter the country? Because we just were like at a point where what we know now about getting married overseas was different back then. Like, all we knew back then in that moment when push came to shove and, you're in a crisis was get on a plane and fly to the States and get married there. And at that time, it wasn't really an option with our timeline. And that's what I call like being on your grown people shit. Like we just didn't have the time, money, and all that. So I was like, I'm just going to move and we'll figure it out. And so I was like, how do I, you had to be a responsible adult. So I had to, I did all kinds of crazy things like visiting the German embassy, asking about a work visa, looking up online, because that stuff's so complicated when you just look it up online, and I'm not good with research. And so then I learned about the Shanghai visa, and I was like, I am eligible to enter into the country up to 90 days, but if I don't have a job, and I'm not someone's dependent, then I have to leave within 90 days. And that was scary and a whole other conversation, and it probably wasn't a pretty conversation in itself. And then so you fast forward to me being like, I'm just gonna roll with the punches and trust my intuition, and everything feels right, but at the same time I'm scared.
And you did the interview.
And
you got it.
And I got the job.
Boom.
And it was crazy.
And then to top it off, I think I ended up getting my extension approved like right at the beginning of that. And then I was like, oh, we get to stay here even longer. So that way we don't have to stay here like 2 years or something like that and then have to leave immediately.
And it allowed our timeline to be the same.
Right.
And going back to what you said earlier about the car, like I didn't have to worry about shipping my car anymore because I just kept getting into wrecks and didn't have to ship a car.
Yeah, it was almost kind of like I'm not gonna say the accident was good, but it was almost like a blessing in disguise because
it was.
Got into an accident, totaled your car, completely paid it off. Get yourself that gap insurance, right? Definitely works. And you were like, boom, I'll just buy a German car when I get there.
Yeah.
And I was like, you just saved yourself like $7,000. You don't have to pay for car shipping costs or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, fast forward, I almost think it would have been the same because they kind of monopolize this whole car game over here for Americans. And then like they pretty much charge you the shipping fee on the car that you buy here because you buy a car here. I have a European spec car, right? You have a German car with US specs that we're going to be able to ship back. But if you don't get that, they pretty much add on the shipping costs ahead of time to the car that you're purchasing. And that's for all vehicles on here, and you don't even realize it. But
so I'm like, I don't know if I would have made out to ship my car or because even when I got here, I was pissed at how much money I had to spend on a car that I did not love. And I'm like, and you guys already know how I feel about my car or how I do the math with my cars from a previous episode. But everything fell into place. And to kind of get even more eerie with things and like universal timing. I remember divine timing. I was in just they had gave me, what did they give me? The stuff that they gave me, steroids, terrible stuff to heal my back. Like the doctor was just like, here's a script. And I was like, what is this? Because I don't really go to the doctor like that. And I had been with a friend who was she was doing cupping. And I'd never heard of cupping. And I was like, yeah, let me come with you. And she was like, listen, I'm about to take you to a place in Philly and it's sacred. Like, this guy doesn't give out his card to anybody. And I was like, what the hell? Where are we going? And I met this Chinese medicine doctor and he was incredible. And he introduced me to cupping and the needles in the back. Why am I going blank right now? Acupuncture. And he gave me some tea because he was telling me that, it looked like I had some hormonal imbalance. Like he could tell with my face because I had also had acne. And the things that
could have been stress too.
It was, yeah. And the things that he told me in the short amount of time that I had known him, it was just one of those things like just a mindset mindset shift. And I definitely recommend that, if you believe in all that, like you go and you try cupping and acupuncture, because it was really great. And he helped heal me better than the steroids. And I had also went to go get a sports massage done too. And that was great. But it was just one of those things that he was like, if you and your husband are ever in Philly, come and say hi. And I hope that we cross paths with him again. And then I will say, I know we're kind of like dragging it on, but something just really crazy that happened was the day that I flew from Philly to Texas to spend time with my family before I moved to Germany. I got the unofficial email that I got the job offer. And it was just so weird that as my best friend in Philly was putting me on the plane, that, I had the job offer, and she definitely like helped coach me get the job and or prepare for the interview and everything. And then the day that I was getting on the plane to leave for Germany, I kid you not, that was when I got the official job offer. And so what a crazy ride. What a crazy ride. And what I did was, because my position didn't afford me, the reason why we keep saying that, I was going to have to pay for my car, most people who are sane and probably responsible, when they move over here, they are on a funded move. So their move is funded. But because the position that I applied for or ended up getting, it was just a transfer, and my pay grade over here doesn't offer funded moves. So with that being said, I am so crazy in love that I was willing to move over here with an unfunded move overseas, which is...
But I was going to help you out with that. Wasn't a big deal.
I had to throw that in there. But so that's just kind of like throwing some little facts in there. That is my crazy story of how I got to Germany.
Courtney saga. Boom, boom. Yeah, so hit up Courtney if you ever need some advice of getting a government job. Yeah.
All right, guys, we hope that you enjoyed our little story time, and we hope you have a great week. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at The Collective Journey Podcast. Don't forget to follow Abe at Abe Farias. I'm not going to spell it out. Me at CocoBella68. And if you're not subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. Share us with your friends. Leave us a comment on Podbean, and leave us 5 stars on iTunes and a review, and we'll catch you guys next week. Courtney and Abe signing out. All right, guys. Thanks for listening.